Japanese literature. Facts about Japan. Nippon, land of the rising sun. Japan, known now as a developed country, which is famous because of its invention, companies, and arts. Here we are going to reveal some Japanese cultures and some of their heritage that have a great effect on their culture. Japanese styles. Japan as a country has a past with its style in its own tradition, in clothing, building, and foods. In clothing, Japanese people used their traditional clothing in the past. Now, they wear it just in special occasions. For just example, the yukata for men, kimono for women, and zori for their sandals. Japanese literature is one of the major bodies of Oriental literature. It is less voluminous than Chinese literature, but comparable to Arabic, Persian, and Indian literature, it covers the period from the 5th century AD to the present. Japanese literature, their poems and odes to the gods, were composed in the early Japanese language before the art of writing was known in Japan. Only fragments of this literature have survived, but these are thought to have been extensive. During the first century of writing in Japan, the spoken language and written language were identical. We have here the example of Japanese literature, The Tale of Genji, written by Japanese writer Murasaki Shikibu in the 11th century, is generally regarded as the earliest novel in any culture and as the greatest masterpiece of Japanese literature. In this scene from the novel, Prince Genji is visiting with his favorite wife, Murasaki, while watching his housemaids, whom he has sent outside to build a snowman. The novel is remarkable for its detailed depiction of the refined culture of Heian period Japan. Next is the Manyoshu, the collecting of 10,000 leaves. This is the Man Moyoshu, the oldest collection of Japanese poetry, was compiled in the 8th century and consists more than 4,000 poems, some of which date from as early as the 5th century. We have here the late 19th and early 20th century, The Child's Play by Higuchi Ichiyo, set in the pleasure quarters of the late Meiji era. This short story focuses on neighborhood adolescents who experience the beginning of adulthood. We have also here the Tale of Heike. The Tale of Heike is a warrior epic of the historic battles between the Genji, Minamoto clan, and the Heike, Taira clan between 1169 and 1185. The tale follows the rise of the Heike, their arrogance and abuse of power, and their destruction of the hands of the Genji. Japanese literature in their written form from at least the 8th century AD to the present, one of the oldest and richest national literatures since the late 80s, Japanese writing have become increasingly familiar abroad. Genres such as haiku verse, no drama, and the Japanese novel have had a substantial impact on literature in many parts of the world. We have Japanese ancient literature, the pre-8th century, with the introduction of kanji from the Asian mainland, writing became possible as there was no native writing system. Consequently, the only literary language was classical Chinese to begin with. Later, the characters were adapted to write Japanese, writing what is known as the Manyogana, the earliest form of kana or syllabic writing. Japanese ancient literature. We have the Nara period. Nara period include Kojiki, a partly mythological, partly accurate history of Japan. We have the Nihon Shoki, a chronicle with a slightly more solid foundation in historical records than the Kojiki, and Manyoshu, a poetry anthology. The language used in the works of this period differs significantly from later periods in both its grammar and phonology. Even in this early era, significant dialectal differences within Japanese are apparent. We have here writers behind Japanese literature. Natsume Soseki, a Japanese author, first gained public attention with his Wagahai Waneko de Aru, and also Tanizaki Junichiro. Many of the works of Japanese author focus on male and female relationship. Japanese writings, those are examples of Japanese writings: the happiness, love, beauty, fortune, and harmony. Japanese writings we have here the kanji. The kanji includes about 2,000 characters derived from the Chinese starting more than 1,500 years ago. With more than 5,000 possible pronunciations, a single character may have from 1 to more than 6 or 7, and covering at least 5,000 possible meaning or semantic fields, which forms the heart of the writing system. Most of these would be recognized by most educated Japanese readers. Several thousand more kanji were also adapted for use by the Japanese and have standardized Japanese pronunciation. We have kana. Sometimes after adapting Chinese characters, the Japanese developed two syllabaries, the kana, partially derived from kanji. Syllabaries are writing systems in which whole syllables rather than discrete sounds or phonemes are presented by signs which cannot broken down into their constituent sound elements. Under kana, we have hiragana. In this syllabary, verb endings and other grammatical elements not present in the Chinese character system and other features of the Japanese language are reflected in writing. Hiragana appears to be more cursive or rounder than katakana. Katakana. This syllabary, which covers exactly the same syllable sound system, is used primarily for writing out the sounds of borrowed words, especially of non-Asian origins, and for emphasis. Katakana is written in a more angular, linear form than is hiragana. We have furigana. These are smaller than usual syllable signs, usually hiragana, that are written alongside of above a kanji, primarily to indicate its correct pronunciation. Remember that any kanji may have several pronunciations or readings which may or may not alter its meaning. So that would be all, and thank you.